Yeah.
Hi, Chris.
Hello, hello. Nice to see you, bro. How are you? Well, you're
Yeah, I'm signed.
nice to be back home.
I know, right? Visiting.
Okay, it's 7:01, we'll call regular meeting RM 23-2024 to order. Uh, Christine?
I turned my mic off.
Pardon?
I turned my mic off here.
No agenda additions.
There are none.
Okay, motion to adopt the agenda,
Call to order.
moved by Councillor Salvi and seconded by Councillor Tatso.
Call to order.
All in favor? Six. Carry.
Let's, Mayor, the mayor. Did you call to order? What time?
I did, I believe.
Oh, okay. 7:01. Thank you, sorry about that, I didn't hear.
No problem. Any declarations of interest tonight? Should not be. Okay. Now, council resolution. Yeah, moved by Councillor Tetzel and seconded by Councillor Shalhoub that the council excuse Councillor Fraser and Deputy Mayor Tetzel from meeting RM 23. All in favor? 6. That's carried. Delegations. Yes, please.
Your worship, we have our regional superintendent of MACA, Melinda Lenore, with us this evening. And she's coordinating with folks back in Yellowknife to do a presentation on the funding, community funding formula and that discussion with council. Christopher Schott, who is in the background there. And so maybe I'll turn it over to Melinda and away we go.
Anytime you're ready, Chris, Christopher Schott can introduce himself as he starts. Can you hear me, Chris?
Yes.
And Daryl, can you make your screen bigger? No, I'm talking to Daryl.
Whoops. I think I shut you down. There you go.
Let me just help you here.
Come and help.
There you go. Yeah, we can see you now.
Councilor Song, you have a question?
Thank you. I just have a question. You mentioned that on 2008, there was a deficit, and in 2014, you mentioned that it's $40 million. And you know that since 2014, there was no any covering for the $40 million in the NWT. So if we calculate the $40 million times 10 years to 2024, that's almost $500 million. So we know that there was no any attempt to cover that gap or deficit until right now, which we could see in the new budget, which just got, I don't know if it got approved or not. Can I know how much our gap in operation and in infrastructure as of 2014? I don't know, but I believe it was like $3 million in infrastructure, 1 million in operation, if I'm not mistaken. It's kind of confusing for me right now with the description of how it went. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. You mentioned on your statement that 2014 there was $40 million gap or $40 million deficit in the NWT, which I believe in Fort Simpson here our percentage of that, we consider ourselves as like 6% of the population of the NWT, and at that time the deficit or the gap for Fort Simpson was 7% of the total gap. And that $40 million in 2014 up to 2024, that's $400 million, almost $500 million. And I don't know if that's true or not, but according to what I've seen on Cabin Radio's report, that there was, we're gonna get to this later, but I just want to get sure that our gap as Fort Simpson was $3 million, two in infrastructure, and $1 million in operation. Thank you. Okay, go ahead. We'll figure it out later. Yeah, do have a question. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Uh, we know that our approved funding for water and wastewater funding is 1.3. And according to the new plan, budget is 1.173. And we have a loss of $97,000. I believe you are one of the few communities that we run biomechanical sewer treatment plant, and we have truck water, and we do have also water in town here. So the reduction of 97,000, that's definitely gonna affect the community in the future, and we are planning to deliver better service and have rebate for the sewer pump out for the community of the island. In addition to that, our plan in the future is to have water for out of the island, so the people should have water other than the truck water. So with this reduction of $97,000, that will definitely affect our community really bad. And I can tell you, right now, few communities around the world they depend on truck water. Even if you go to Timbuktu, you will not find truck water. So I feel I feel it's not fair for Fort Simpson that we have that reduction. Yeah, there was a surplus valuation of 1.9 million, but we start giving rebate for the community who have the truck water. So how that's going to help us? Thank you. Why that? Why doesn't that apply to Yellow Knife, which get extra funding of $712,000 for what they have? Why Yellow Knife at the center? Why they didn't consider that when they up the rate with $700,000? Yeah, they took $97,000 for Simpson as a community, and if that's the logic, Yellowknife right now got extra $712,000 for the new budget. So why didn't they just have the same? They have to deal the same way with as the communities. Yeah, they should figure out their way of handling the water and the sewer and the water. Why they got more money? Thank you.
No. Excuse me. Excuse me. Yeah, because your slides are too small for us to read because we don't have a copy of the handouts. So, yeah, can you make that slide bigger? Maybe X your face on the screen and then it will get bigger.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah. We couldn't follow what you're saying because we don't have any handout. Just
Uh, Chris, is your numbers at the bottom a hypothetical? Because that's not Fort Simpson's reality.
it again.
Can you make it big again? Please?
So what was your question again? Which one? Uh, yeah, can I ask a question?
Man,
Yeah.
the actual numbers that are presenting here are not Fort Simpson's numbers at all. Our total assets in total are only around 27 million in total for everything.
Well, he indicated that it's an hypothetical dollars or numbers. It's not really Fort Simpson.
Anything in the ground and all that.
So,
That's everything.
I do have a question. So those costs, is that you mentioned replacement cost, is it the book value or the replacement cost? Is, for the useful life, who determines the useful life? Is it,
thank you. According to the SAOs, the numbers are not right. So how can we depend on calculation from your life for, those numbers are not the correct numbers. So it doesn't make any sense to talk about incorrect numbers.
Um, I can't reconcile that with the numbers that are being presented. um, Because I don't know what you're basing the replacement values on. Um, And as far as the O and M funding calculations, I guess knowing a little bit more about how you are calculating the standard revenue based on income, um, uh, the overall income of a particular community, in this case Fort Simpson, how you arrive at that standard revenue number and how, um, I see how you do the calculation. I'm just not sure how that standard revenue is calculated at MACA's end. And I can tell you that the operation and maintenance calculation of 2.7 million is about 700,000 more than we receive presently. You're in, yes, 2,032,000. Yeah. Those numbers look like, yes.
Can I ask a question? Who determines those options? How, yeah, is it the, so is it based on a kind of our performance? That's how you're gonna determine which option should we belong?
So maybe I can add a little bit of information. So once we've done maybe 28 of the 32 communities of this presentation, and we've taken their options back. Once we've done that, we compile them all, the information will go to the DM, and they will have their meeting and decide on what they want to do and how, what the communities essentially prefer in their decision. So at the end of this, at some point, Daryl will send me an email and tell me what council would like.
Because I'm just wondering, because this is the decision of the council,
Yes.
which options, reviewing what you have presented. Right now, it's kind of difficult to absorb all those informations in one sitting, because we don't have copies of those, and I read, like, for me, I read those old policies that you had that was signed by Shane Thompson before. That was in October 2023. Now you're changing it a year and a half or 2 years later, right? So, yeah, I was just wondering, because what we're looking at, what's the pros and cons that we have based on this option or the policy as a whole? Because there's no, is this a consultation, or you're presenting what's going to happen by April 1st? Okay, so it's just consultation. So is this final policy, this revised one, effective April 1st? So it's a consultation process. So, okay.
Councillor Hassan had a question?
Thank you. Honestly, it's kind of very confusing. I'm looking here at what's being proposed for this April approval, and I don't know, but I'll just tell you that personally, I'm not happy with this, because I feel that, first, the population of the NWT is shrinking by 4%. So if they say that whatever they came up with according to population, that doesn't make sense. The second part is what I see here. I know since 2014, the Young Life at the center, the gap they have was $2 million. And right now with this new policy, with all that, Young Life is a big tax-based city or community, they get $3 million when their deficit is $2 million. And the other one, if they consider us as just a small community or as a center, Fort Simpson is the center. I noticed Hay River get $1.6 million for Innovate get $2.8 million, while we get only $276,000, which is with 91,000 short on the water and sewer. Okay, I feel that the center is killing the small communities, and especially for Simpson. And this one I'm going to mention it just for just to mention where I'm coming from. When during COVID, we didn't have any economy growing in the community here. The economy in Fort Simpson is stagnant economy. During COVID, Yellowknife got the best of COVID. Harriman got the best, and other communities even, when we got nothing. Even people from this community, when they go for treatment, go for anything, they come and they have to isolate in Yellowknife where they boost their economy, they boost their accommodation economy. The economy there is really going better. While in Fort Simpson here, we don't have anything. And I feel kind of like sad that the center is taking everything and they're giving us nothing. So that's the point which I want to reach to. Fort Simpson as a community, that's like we're getting nothing. We're planning to have a health center. We don't have a health. We never had a health center. A good new health center. All the communities in the NWT they got brand new health centers when we don't have a health center. So it is a plan to kill Fort Simpson. I know that you are not there to answer my question, but I want you to put it on the comments. I'm a counselor here. I could say whatever I want, but I feel the government in your life, they are just like they don't care about Fort Simpson. That's what I come up with. Thank you. I'm just sad that this is how Yellowknife is dealing with Fort Simpson. Thank you.
Can we have a copy of your slides?
I can, yeah.
I just have last question. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. How can we advocate for more to raise the funding which is allocated for Fort Simpson, according to you? Yeah. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
First.
Yes. People go on to the next delegation, the flood hazard mapping.
Michelle Cullen,
Yes. Okay.
you have the floor.
Thank you. Is it possible to bring up that
PowerPoint?
PowerPoint?
Yes.
I-
I don't know how to make it big.
We just have to start the slideshow. Scroll over to slideshow, there we go. And I did provide some copies, I apologize, I'm short a few, so, and I don't mind sharing that. There's also a one-page, plain language summary. First, I'd like to thank you all for having us here in Fort Simpson and Lidley Quay. We also met this afternoon with Lidley Quay First Nation, with Dieter Kazan and some of his staff, which was really great. And I'll just introduce my team here we're from GNWT Environment and Climate Change in Yellowknife, most of us. This is Ad Sade, he'll be co-presenting with me, a hydrologist with our team. And Ryan Cunnins, our senior hydrologist as well. And Dan Healy is a water resource engineer who is with Northwest Hydraulics, who's developed these maps that we'll be talking about. Chris Hewitt's here from MACA Community Planning, and we work together just to on some of this work as well, just to mutually support each other where we can. And thanks to Melinda and Lori, Nadia, who are both here, superintendents for ECC and MACA. All right, next slide. Thanks. So just to quickly outline presentation, we'll be going over the importance of flood mapping and the approach that we've taken in the NWT for flood mapping, which a lot of this is based on federal support and federal funding, which we'll talk about. And we'll quickly review the different types of flood maps developed and the community engagement and next steps on the mapping. On the next slide. Updated flood maps are really critical tools for communities and for all levels of government, from municipal governments, indigenous governments, and federal and territorial governments to use. The main reasons are for emergency flood preparedness, to help protect lives and property, for risk management, and also for community planning. And we understand that Fort Simpson is working on a community plan right now, and so this is really timely information. The next slide. Also, if you'd like to just jump in at any point with a question, that's fine, and we can take questions after. Just to quickly mention the history of flood mapping, some people might be familiar with an old flood map that exists that was developed in 1985 for Fort Simpson, which we'll show a bit later. And it was developed under the Federal Flood Damage Reduction Program in the 1980s. And that was all initiated by the Government of Canada through an agreement with the Government of Northwest Territories. Then there was a very long period where there was no flood mapping until recently in 2021-22, there was a new program by Canada managed through Natural Resources Canada. And it's called the Flood Hazard Identification and Mapping Program. They've allocated funding to all provinces and territories to update flood maps. And this is the program we're currently working under, and that is supporting and staffing some of our positions even through this federal funding. Next slide. So the program is targeted to help the GNWT develop flood maps for high priority communities. And the flood maps have particular criteria that are needed to meet certain standards across Canada as well, and we'll look at that a little bit more. Right now, the Department of Environment and Climate Change is leading the technical work of the flood map development, and we have 4 years of funding through to 27-28 for these flood maps. As noted, we're doing the technical flood mapping. We're not, it's Municipal and Community Affairs who's the lead on response to flooding, as you're well aware, with the 2021 flood here, but we do work closely together, particularly in the spring when we're monitoring water levels closely and potential flood risks. Next slide. There are a lot of different reasons to update flood maps, many of which you'll be familiar with, but a lot of advances in methods and in technology. There's been improved satellite imagery, which has really been really critical for these maps. New air photos, different types of modeling have improved significantly as well, and methods to determine different flood zones. And this will make more sense when Jad talks about these different flood zones a little bit more. Also, the fact that there have been more recent floods, like the 2021 flood, that provides information going out and getting high water marks and having new data. All of this helps to input into these models that are used to create the floods. We'll go to the next slide. These are the communities that are deemed at highest risk of flooding in the NWT, and we are focused on flooding from rivers, not coastal flooding. There's some separate work going on the coast. Fort Simpson, along with Hay River and the Clavic, were in the first round of top priority communities for flood mapping and are well underway. We're nearing completion now. And then we've initiated some work in Fort Good Hope, and recently started working with Nahanni Butte as well on some mapping. And the remaining communities will roll out over the next 2 or 3 years as well. So we can hopefully have maps for all of the communities before our federal funding runs out. So there are 2 main types of flood maps that we're working on. And we have these maps here, and we really hope that, I know it's getting late, but that after the meeting, we'd love to talk to you about some of the paper maps. It's a lot easier sometimes to just look at the paper map. The first one is a flood inundation map, and we'll have that on the screen as well. And it basically shows the extent of a flood that happened. So in this case, with the 2021 flood, we were able to, through some modeling and through collection of data and satellite imagery, have a map of the extent of the flood. So this map doesn't show how deep the water is, it just essentially shows where there was water. Whether it's 1 inch or 1 foot, that's not part of that particular map. The intent of that map is to help with community emergency planning, knowing like what areas could be used to exit or enter a community safely based on a historic flood. And the second type of map is the flood hazard map, and we have a draft flood hazard maps here tonight. And those are more technical in nature. You see the term here, theoretical flood, but essentially it's kind of a prediction of different types of floods that could happen in different intervals of floods. So you'll often hear the term a 1 in 100 year flood or a 1 in 200 year flood. And the equivalent to this is called an annual exceedance probability. It's a better way of looking at it. It's like, what is the 1% chance of it happening in any 1 year? It doesn't mean it's going to happen every once in 100 years. So the terminology can be a bit confusing at first, but just to know that the flood could happen a few years in a row, even if there's just a 1% chance. The next slide. So there's some basic requirements needed to develop these maps. The flood inundation map is a bit simpler, and having high water marks, basic satellite imagery, and community observations are really the key points. Some modeling can be used to help develop the map as well. We were here in Fort Simpson about a year ago and met at the time with Mayor Welly, and Mitchell Gass was acting SAO, and counselors and other village staff who were actually in the community during the 2021 flood, and it was really helpful to sit around with the draft maps and see where some minor changes needed to be made. So then we've, over the course of the year, finalized those inundation maps and have those here. And the next slide. And then more recently, we've been working on the flood hazard maps, and these are maps that need to be authenticated and officially stamped by engineers and use hydraulic and hydrological modeling to be developed, as well as the satellite imagery. And also a bathymetric survey, which is a survey of like the cross-section of the river. So Northwest Hydraulics staff were here in June and conducted a survey of certain sections of the river. This is just to show a quick representation of what a floodplain is and the different zones that we use, and Jad's going to go into this in more detail. But a floodplain is basically the area that's at risk of flooding, and then it can be divided into multiple zones. Usually in what we've mapped are the floodway and the flood fringe. And the floodway is the zone that carries the most water. So it includes the river and then areas along the shore that are deeper than 1 meter. And the flow is stronger and can be more destructive. And the flood fringe is in areas that are typically shallower, less than 1 meter, can be less destructive, usually is less destructive, and there could potentially be, there are areas where often there's development, but there's development that's flood-proofed in a way. You see the little schematic of the house on poles, or on pilings there. And so there are ways to continue to live safely, for example, in a flood fringe. In a floodway, which is more dangerous, development is often reduced to uses that don't have a lot of physical infrastructure, like parks, for example. I'll pass it over to Jad to continue talking about the details.
Thank you, Michelle. Hi, everyone. So the current map in Fort Simpson is one designated in 1985. It's been a while, so it's outdated. It's under the FDRP program that Michelle mentioned. This map was based on historical floods, a number of them, including the famous 1963 flood. So it showed the extent of these floods. This is the map on the right. There's a lot of wording in it, but the main thing to just take out of this is there are the two zones Michelle talked about. The dark red being the floodway, the more destructive, the one that holds most of the flow, and light pink being the flood fringe. And just a quick observation, we see the access road to the community is partly inundated at the entrance, and most of the flood fringe inside the island is at the intersection of 100th Street and 100th Avenue. Just quick observations, we can go more in details on the printed maps later on. Another thing to note is the title of this map was previously called Flood Risk Map at the top, which is what we now call Flood Hazard Map. Next slide, please. As Michelle mentioned, we had the previous engagement before on the draft inundation map. The inundation map, which was for the 2021 flood, the highest flood on record. We had again NHC come in with GNWT staff, and we met with the community. We had the map printed, and we pointed some fingers on where people recollected if it was wet or dry. And we took that input, these markups, and asked Dan from NHC to edit them based on the inputs from the community. So this was last year, and we got this feedback, and we've come today with the final inundation map. So these feedback being addressed, and with another engagement on the draft hazard map. Next slide, please. Quick list, just for reference. See them come back. Thanks, Doug. The major floods of record in recent history are based on the water level at the gauge at the community. From 63 till 2021, The highest flood of record based on that flood level is the 2021 flood, and they're all driven by ice jams. That's the main flooding mechanism. The second on the list would be the 1963 flood with 50.5 meter flood level, and the rest being 1972, 76, 89, 1992. Next slide, please. This is the final inundation map, where you only see one layer, the blue layer, as opposed to the flood hazard maps. This is the inundation extent. There's a bunch of information in the title block at the bottom. We can go over it together. Just that gives dates of when imagery was collected, some notes for the users, and some other information on the legend. This next slide, please. The next slide is a zoom in of this one. If you recall the old FTRP map, this is slightly lesser extent than the FTRP map. The access road to the community is almost dry, and again, there is inundation in the middle of the community and the similar area at the intersection. And the building we are in this map was dry back then. So if a flood were to happen today, like that one, we'll be dry. We're good. Next slide, please. Now for the hazard maps, the ones we come for today, the draft hazard maps. We have two scenarios, 1 in 100 and 1 in 200. And as Michelle mentioned, we're terming them as AEPs, so 1% chance AEP and 0.5%. And these are ice-affected floods. Both the two zones you see are the dark red and the light pink. Dark red being the floodway, light pink being the flood fringe. The next slide, please, would have zoomed in partly of these extents. The 1 in 200, so the 0.5% is obviously having more impact on the community. The flood fringe is even more severe at the center, and on the northwest part of it, the floodway is affecting more property on the northwest part of the island. The access road to the community was dry in the 1%, so the 1 in 100 year. But 1 in 200 year, there's some more inundation in the access road. These are quick observations. There are tons of more stuff when we go into roads and parcels, but for now, just comparison. Next slide, please. We asked Dan to help us compare the water levels for all of these floods we've been mentioning for context. This is a plot for the water levels. On the y-axis is the water level at the station, and on the x-axis is the return period. When we match that with the line, we would get how high the water level is for every flood. So the red line is the one that's simulated, and the black points are the ones that are the observed maximum annual water levels at the gauge from 1972 till 2023. So all these years, the maximum water level is recorded, ranked, and plotted here. This is a probability plot. It's termed a flood level frequency plot. We can see here that the main ones we listed earlier, the 1976, 1992, 72, 89, 63 estimated because it was before the period where there was a gauge, so before this recorded period. The 2021 and the other three red labeled points are the ones that are of interest. The 20-year, the 100-year, which almost coincides with the 2021 flood, and then the 200-year, which is much higher. We added also the green line, which is the estimated flood level for this 1985 FTRP map. It has a thickness more than the rest because it has sort of a range of flood level, the elevation. So for comparison, we can just see on this datum of this gauge, the 2021 flood is almost compatible with 1 in 100 based on the level only. Dan also was able to add the historical flood perception level, the dashed black line, which is just a line for visual to see that anything above this line is when we have something noticeable, like an actual high water event, like these labeled years we have here. Again, this is on water level comparison. We talked earlier on the flood extents, and we can talk more about the model and how we obtain these maps after maybe the presentation. If any details, we'd be happy to discuss. But for now, just giving a comparison and going to next steps, please, in the next slide. So now that we have provided the community with the 2021 flood inundation map, as Michelle mentioned, this is intended ideally for emergency planning purposes. And now with these draft hazard maps, we want to get feedback and discussions with the community on all the concerns that the community has on certain areas or their plans for mitigation or their plans for development, given these maps are intended for community planning. So as Michelle mentioned, this is the right time. The final maps will be provided to the community in March. So we'll gather the feedback today and just have more discussions on these maps. Yeah, for this slide, this is it. Next slide, please. This is the last slide. We're very happy to be here. Thank you very much. Please reach out to us if you have any questions. We'll be providing the maps later on in PDF and JS files as well when they're finalized. And today, after this presentation, it would be great if you have a two-way conversation or dialogue on these maps together. If you have any questions on the model, this would be a good time to chat on them. Yeah, thank you very much.
Any questions?
So the purpose of this presentation is for us to be able to do our emergency planning right after all those calamities that had happened. Well, the main one was in 2021, although it took about almost 2 years before we could do some of this inundation map. So the result of the flooding caused erosions on the riverbanks. So is there a plan for remediation or to prevent further flooding? Because otherwise you're going to lose more land and that affects people's properties and the roads as well.
Right, and so this is something that we don't have a plan for because it's not like our job is to develop these maps with this funding, but ultimately it's up to the community to decide how you want to use this information and determine, where it might be safe or not safe to have development, or if you want to do some sort of preventative mitigation work because of erosion. All of that it's really challenging for all the communities to look at right now. Erosion's a big concern, but it's definitely a little bit outside of our scope. I don't know, Ryan, if you want to add anything.
Yeah, I would say that covers it. We're, in terms of there's nothing we can really do to prevent flooding. Another part of our shop is trying to build up more awareness to be more prepared for when flooding events do happen. But the main purpose of these maps is to try and provide communities with as much information as possible about areas that may be inundated and flooded and similar events in the future.
I would like to add, there's quite a few communities dealing with this concern, and several of them have accessed other federal funding pots. Climate change preparedness in the North funding is one of them, and there's been some disaster mitigation funding also, and through the NWT Association of Communities, they've got a few staff working on climate change and erosion related files, so I can certainly put you in touch with the right people there to potentially access other pots of funding or concerns.
Yeah, it's just that because we don't have those capital dollars to do that, right? Because it devalues the property of the land. And as well, like, there's people are still building close to the riverbanks. I mean, like, you only have few meters before you hit the water and you don't even know it's caved in underneath already, and there's nothing, even big rocks or anything like that to prevent it to further get swept away. You know, we're lucky this year it's kind of dry during the ice break. So yeah, I'm just wondering about that one.
Yeah, and the erosion piece is gonna be different than what we're talking
Yeah,
about today.
yeah, yeah.
Obviously, yeah, when you do get higher water and the ice comes through and chews away at the riverbank, that's gonna be a problem as well. But that's a little bit outside of the scope of what we're doing with this project, but that, stuff like that is good to hear from communities and to.
This is
hear
a good
about.
information though, like, it's very good information. It's just that what's after that information that was given to us, so I guess it's based on the governance in this level, right?
It's really
What we
like
wanna do,
the
yeah.
community plan will be a big piece there, maybe. Chris, I don't know if you want to.
It's a privilege to be able to be in this room after so many years, but at the same time, I'm also privileged to be working with many communities right now. My job as manager of community planning with MACA and the Community Governance Division in Yellowknife. So my privilege working with many communities is planning is one of the tools to support effective climate change adaptation. Tuktoyaktuk right now is probably our poster community for a community that is dealing with erosion of the Beaufort Sea. 4 houses removed about 4 or 5 years ago from an area of erosion, 6 kilometers inland. They're also psychologically getting ready to relocate in 20, 30 years to a new site, probably about 12 kilometers away from where they are. Still dealing with permafrost, a lot of water in and around that area. So they are using their planning to come up with some strategies to help them deal with that serious issue there. So psychologically, it's taken a long time for them to think about when's the right time. So they got researchers and stuff working with them. Closer to home here, Forked Hope is a riverbank community that has done some work with updating riverbank stability studies. It took a crisis for them to recognize the value in their community planning documents, which are 20 years old. The value to use those documents to be ready for future housing opportunities, but also to be ready for retreating homes from the riverbank. So communities like that using planning as a way not only be ready for new housing, but to be able to retreat in to move some of those houses. Now the challenge is for Forked Hope is to have the plans ready, to have a plan in place, because territorial government is not going to have the big money that's needed to go and move those 4 houses in Tuck a few years ago. It was federal government disaster mitigation and adaptation funding, forget the name, DMAP is the name of the pot. So it took them to be prepared to have some homework done to show the new lines on the map, which those 4 houses were at risk to be falling into that water sea there. So the money came, they were able to move those 4 houses. That being said, it's just a drop in the bucket really for the other infrastructure that's on that shoreline. So the emergent practice of our planning in the Northwest Territories, and here I am 25 years into my career, knowing Simpson was one of the places I started as a planner. But at the same time, as the emergent practice is to take on more of a risk-based approach. The new lines on the map, these flood maps, knowing when I started 25 years ago, these flood maps, you knew they were outdated, but you knew there was something in them still that reflected what could happen. That's always the way I looked at Fort Simpson's flood map, and I'm interested to see, this is the first time for me, this why I'm here today, is a chance to see these maps. So your 1985 map has floodway, flood fringe. I'm curious to see how that layer lines up on these maps. Again, flood mapping is a layer of information that your planning consultants are looking forward to applying. And we know that the new lines on the map across the territory, across the country, as you apply these new lines, it's going to lead to implications. It's going to be new information. It's going to have effects on people's property, whether it's a business, community public infrastructure, or residents where they live now. It's too bad it's taken these emergency situations, these crises. For Good Hope, there's a crisis. They said, oh, we need to update our plan. I was there 7 years ago trying to advocate them to update it then, but it takes certain council's leadership, administration, to see the value in it and invest the money to hire those planners. The role of the planner to help guide the conversation, the discussion. That's the key piece. Your planners, FO10, I've gone through your documents. They're great documents. The background report, if you haven't read it already, it's probably one of the better background reports. The community planning legislation that we have, called the Community Planning and Development Act, is the legislative framework for planning tools, community plan bylaws, zoning bylaws, subdivision of land. So the legislation we have provides the framework for processes and what should be in those tools. So the community plan, of course, is your vision, it's your policies, but it must have land management policies around environmentally sensitive areas. It doesn't say climate change in our act, but you can read between the lines that back in 2014, when this legislation was updated from the 1974 legislation, it didn't talk about climate change, but it talked about environmentally sensitive areas, which means land subject to flooding and land subject to ground instability, which we know flooding and permafrost degradation or riverbank coastal erosion are some of the big hazards that our communities are dealing with. So connected to that statement, community plan must have land management policies around flooding. It's connected also to the next section in the legislation that says community plans must be based on studies, various types of studies, could be anything. Here we have climate change data, climate change modeling, we have updated flood maps, but those maps associated with those land management policies need to be connected to the plan, which means identifying the flood risk areas in the plan. So most of our communities, Hay River, Fort Good Hope to Aklavik, to Simpson even, your 1985 flood maps are reflected in your current bylaw, trying to manage development around what you know at the time. And what we know at the time is the existing flood maps are what's available right now. If it's not available, then you're probably going to be working off that. And it could be a flood fringe issue, it could be a floodway. So it's a matter of understanding how flood fringe can be interpreted and floodway. There's ways to do that because they're laid out already. Hay River uses flood fringe and floodway in their plan. In your current document, it talks about a flood hazard line. And that's probably based on what your planning consultants, FO10, had at the time when they were drafting the document. Because in their background report, they kind of captured everything they could to kind of come to the analysis and the proposed documents. That's essentially those professional planners and how they were able to learn from the engagement sessions, learn from what they've heard from administration and council at the time. In a nutshell, that's what we're up against right now in the work that I'm navigating right now with communities. It's different than what it was 25 years ago, let me tell you, from my days in Rankin Inlet and Nuvik and Fort Simpson. So it's interesting to see the new lines on the map coming in, but it's important how we determine and these are our community governance plans. So review is where we always focus on the process. Every 8 years under the Act, plans should be reviewed. City of Yellowknife, after 4 to 5 years, they decided we need to do another comprehensive review. So these interim reviews, Enterprise, after 3 years, they decided to review theirs for their fire situation there. So communities are starting to use the plans more effectively and strategically. And I start off with review because that's what everyone focuses on. But as councils are only about 3 to 4 years, depending on which community you're at, City of Yellowknife's 4. But administration of the plan is important. But one of the things we don't focus in enough on is implementation. And the gems, the strategies, and the little bits of advice that comes up during the plan review There's lots of pieces in there that we forget about because they're embedded in there and we don't pick it up enough to remember what's in there for implementation. So we have a lot of communities starting to think about implementation because they're starting to realize we want to get new housing. We need to make sure we have land available at the right time. And it's up to our communities to be in that position. Again, it's climate change adaptation as well, is to think about not only having the right tools in place, be transparent about your hazards, because it's also going to be connected to whatever financial assistance may come from future disasters. And if you can demonstrate that you're trying to be resilient in your documents now, and when the next disaster hits, that could be reflected in the type of assistance you get. So there's going to be some changes likely with the disaster financial assistance arrangement that's being worked on and connections to reflected in your planning tools that you have responsibility for. So it's just, this is what I've learned in my my career at this time, and having some connections here, where the regional mislead, but I also try and look at it from the perspective of administration and implementation. I know there's some challenging questions for some people. The lines on the map started changing, but the mitigation is happening. We know some people's homes, a lot of people's homes were raised. So some of those units that are in those flood fringe or floodway areas, if you look on the old 1985 map, there's lots of homes that are in those fringe and floodway areas. So essentially, they're probably non-conforming to the plan. They're legally allowed to be there, non-conforming. But if they burn down, they probably would need to be built with a new development permit to a new standard. So from an asset management life cycle approach, that's the way I look at it these days. Same with Tuck. They're going to have to go through that asset management life cycle approach for some of their units, whether they're going to be rebuilt in certain areas or nope, maybe they need to rebuild in a safer spot. That's resiliency.
Shouldn't you be allowed to build whatever you want to build on your property at your own risk? You know, this
good
is like
question.
the government saying, your house flooded now, you can't build there again unless you build it to our standards. Why can't they build it the way that they want? And if they flood again, it's at their own risk. The government doesn't have to jump in and save them again, over and over again. You know, that's my problem with this whole,
Interesting.
the lines of the map and everything, and just telling people what you can and cannot do on a piece of property that you own. That's a big issue in this community. A lot of people are really, really upset with this, with these lines on the maps and the increase of costs it's going to be to everybody's insurance, whether or not they could even get insurance for their properties. Like that's the huge thing. Is like, if I have $500,000 and I want to go and build something, I should be able to build it without the village saying, no, Rashenda, you are in a flood zone. You cannot build that. You have to build it to our standards. I don't think that's right. I think that I should be allowed to build it. It's my money, it's my land. You know, as long as I'm not building in a skyscraper on the island or something that's going to interfere with planes or something, you know, within reason, I should be able to build it. I should be able to build a basement if I want. Nobody should be able to say you can't. It's my property. I should be able to do that. So that is my issue with all of this community planning and the flood lines. Is you're basically telling homeowners where they can and they cannot build, and what they can and cannot build on their property. And that's the problem. If somebody's property on the road by the airport floods, now they can't build again. They can't live there again. They have to raise their house 4 feet or comply with whatever rules government says or the village says that they have to do. And I totally disagree with that. I think, fine, you want to build, then here, you sign this waiver If your property floods again, you're not going to MACA and you're not coming to the village for funding from us. You'll have to figure out through bank loans or whatever it is to rebuild your house. And that's the way I think it should be. Not, not with all these rules like what you have to now. You know, let's measure, let's take out our tape measure. Is this exactly 4 feet above the ground? Because you're in the flood zone now. I totally disagree with this. And it's really, really dividing our community and affecting our people here. This whole, all this mapping. It's really, really dividing people. And we did have a community meeting where people walked out that were really, really upset with what was going to be done. Basically, if, you know, your property's in a flood zone, according to these maps, it's worth nothing, absolutely nothing. So how are you going to ever sell your property or develop it or, you know, use it for collateral to develop it if you are marked red in a flood zone? So that's the biggest issue I think that a lot of people are having with this, and I don't think it should be implemented the way that it is, because it's overbearing, and it's the government's rules to tell us what to do and what not to do on our property. Maybe they should own the property, like all of it. If they want to tell us what to do on it.
I do have a question to Naka. You know, the flood that we had in 2021 where some houses were underwater, or they kind of breached their houses, right? So they couldn't go back in that property. They have to relocate on the island, outside the island. So what happens with that property that they left? Because they were provided a new house and a new land. So that property that they vacated, because they couldn't build anymore in there, is that in replacement to, is that kind of, because the government got those properties for them to relocate. So that, was there an exchange there where the government now owns that piece of, that parcel of land that they vacated? I'm just wondering. Is that how it works? Because a lot of them that were living in there, they all moved out. So most of them. Some they got, you know, some were repaired and got lifted a little bit higher, right? And stuff like that. Because so I'm just wondering how does that work? Because it's taxpayers' money too.
The 2021 flood and the response to it and the improvements and all the stuff that went on, there's not a lot of details I can share with you. If you want some research, my suggestion is to do some research through the assessment rolls. I can't provide a lot of details publicly for individual files because we're such a small community.
I've got a question. So the 2021 flood was estimated at 15.99 meters. What are the 100-year and the 200-year estimates at?
Pull the slide back. Is that the last slide with the flood?
They're there.
Yeah, but there's no numbers on it.
It's on the left.
We can get that, but Dan would have those numbers, he can get them to you, but we don't have them off the top of our head.
That
It's like
chart's
16 point,
You showed the chart.
Yeah, there's no numbers.
16.4.
Yeah, there's 100, but there's no number, right?
Y-axis.
So it's like no number.
That's 21 flood.
Yeah, it's 21 flood.
15.99.
Yeah, 15.99. So is that 100 like a 15 or 16.1, 16.5, right? Like,
Yeah.
because if we're gonna, let's say we're gonna engineer around a flood, right? We need numbers, right? Like there's the area of town where we just cleared all the trees, right? There was probably only a foot of water on there, or 3 feet of water in some areas. We can engineer around that, so it's now flood proof, right? So we need the numbers.
We have the numbers here.
Oh, I'm sure you do, but they're not on here.
Yeah, we
We have
can,
the report if you
we'll
want.
get those to you.
Yeah, you can look here, just the comparison visual.
Yeah.
I can give you the exact number, but this is still a draft report, the project is not complete yet.
Yeah, so it's gonna be complete. The number's not gonna change between now and March, I'm sure, right? When the report's finished, right? But between now and March, we can call in an engineer and have these plotted out so that we know how much fill we have to put in to make them areas flood-proof.
Yeah, you can follow up more conversations later on and give a bit more accurate numbers, and work together on this.
Oh, yeah,
On the top of my head, but we don't have a number, I can really open the draft report.
No, that's fine, as long as we get the numbers.
We can work together on that.
Yeah.
May I ask, generally speaking, when you look at this graph, the 2021 black dot mark corresponds with the 100-year red mark?
For this comparison of
For that
the
comparison.
11
Yeah,
application.
is that suggesting the 15.99 is relative to a 100-year event?
Yes, for this analysis in this.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah, the 1 in 200 is maybe just about 60.5.
So it's like half a meter higher. So we can engineer around that too.
Yeah, we'll get you those numbers right away.
We can even chat tomorrow morning and get you those numbers.
Excellent.
Gentlemen in back.
Well, I just wanted to add that there is no one number if you're looking at engineering solutions. It varies along the length of the river. And this, tomorrow we could follow up with more on that.
So there'll be a high water mark, right, on the Mackenzie, right? So if our causeway coming in is fine at the 200-year mark, except for the, just where it comes into town, because there's a low spot there. But if we engineer and we raise that up by the, 18 inches or whatever it needs to meet the 200-year, and say we build a berm across the airstrip to the mainland at the same height, so that makes basically that side of the island flood-free, right? So the houses that were affected along the airstrip would be out of the flood zone.
You can do some engineering. I just wanted to remark that that number is indicative of that flood magnitude at your water survey gauge. And there's a dot that shows where it is on the map, but up at the causeway, it's a little bit higher.
The water's
Because
higher.
Because the water goes downhill, it's on a slope.
Yeah.
The river's on a slope. That's all I'm just saying is don't hang your hat on one number for the whole island.
So yeah, we take the high water mark at that end of the island because it's higher, right? And we build the berm at the same height down there, right, where the water should be lower, so it should be safer. Because water finds some level, right?
Yeah.
So if we build to protect at the high water mark, it should be protected across the, like you said, this building will be dry, right? So if we say we're gonna build all a berm at this level down towards the liquor store, let's say, right? So that would make that basically flood free. The only place that would be open would be the road, and we could put some, cement barriers in there during a flood, and that would stop water, right?
There are mitigation ways, and this is the next step. So there are many ways to mitigate the flood. This is mainly the first step is to model, so risk-based.
Yeah, and to get the high water mark or number.
Yes, but as I mentioned, at the particular location, so that level is the level at the location of the gauge.
So in the center of town where our water gauge is. See, we've got pictures and from the 21 flood, so we know where the high water mark is at that, right? Everybody that stayed in town, yeah, there's lots of pictures. We got lots of pictures of over by the health center, which is center of town. We've got like the high water mark there, right? I'm just saying it's easier to engineer around a flood than it is a fire, forest fire. So,
I understand what you mean, sir, and it makes sense. You just don't stick to a number. It's just the idea of one number for the whole area.
well,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, but if you take the highest number and you engineer to be safe in that, at that height, then it should be safe right across the town,
In theory.
in theory.
Yeah, I think I know the difference between, so Mary's saying you take the highest water, the highest value that you'll find in the community. And if you floodproof to that highest level, then the whole community will be fine. And that would generally be right. If you find that, you just need to know the highest value.
Yeah, I guess you still need to model what the mitigation is gonna cover, what the area is gonna be like. And McKinsey is huge, and this one small area on this road won't really cover this small zone you're thinking of. So it's just a model that would answer your question. That's what I'm saying. Not like in theory what you would say should make sense. They should work, but just a model that would accurately answer your question.
Yeah, so I think basically what you're saying is it's a guide, and there's many things that can change. I mean, if we build a berm, it can change other things, you know, like I don't think anybody here is committed to saying, yes, that's absolutely right. There would be no, yeah, go ahead and do that. There's no problems. Nobody wants to commit to that right now. I think we would have to hire somebody specifically to look at that.
And
Right now,
that's,
we're just looking at that.
and that's why I like the number.
Yeah, even so, I think a lot of things would change. I don't think anybody here is going to say that if you build to this number, you're going to be safe. So I think maybe we could move on. I think they're going to answer questions tomorrow, but I feel like we're getting off subject here.
You are able to come back in the morning if anybody wants to
We can be here
fire more questions at you.
8:30, 9 o'clock, however, whatever you want.
9 o'clock?
Nine sounds good.
Okay.
If I may ask to please share these maps with your consultant, the hazard maps, because they are the planners and they would know exactly what to do with these maps and they can help you answer these questions. The way Chris explained, they know exactly how they can translate these maps into actual planning for your community plans. And we can always follow up later on in meetings and reach out if you have any more questions.
So we brought copies of the inundation map, the 1 in 100 year and the 1 in 200 year. And then on the back table here, what Chad has done is he's taken different versions and overlaying them on each other. For example, you can see the 1 in 100 year flood relative to the old 1985 map, for example, or the 1 in 100 year flood relative to the 2021 inundation map. So I think he's done pretty much every combination of overlaying if you want to see sort of what the lines look like relative to different lines. So those 3 maps at the front are all unique maps, and then at the back, I think there's 10 different maps here that are some sort of subset of something overlaying on each other, and those are really useful tools to see what the lines look like.
You're going to give us all those maps.
Yes, we'll keep copies.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you very much. You
think you have other matters.
We do. You don't, I don't, if you wish to go now, you.
Well, we're happy to stick around with
Okay.
whoever wants to stay after.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion here moved by Councillor Hetzel and seconded by Councillor Pastumet. The council approved the minutes of RM 22-2024 of November 18th, 2024. And,
I just have, I declared conflict on 10A.
10A, was it?
So it's not written the record of when I, 10E, there is no record of me leaving the room here. That should be recorded.
We'll make note that you left.
All right, thank you.
Who's the context?
all in favor?
Yes, I know.
All in favor of change? Motion is carried.
So just a question with that then, because, Counselor Hassan declared a conflict on that. But he seconded that motion
I signed the motion at the beginning of the meeting.
at the beginning.
Oh, that's not detrimental. It doesn't have a negative impact. It's just putting a motion on the floor
Okay,
and then him declaring is what he needed to do.
Okay, for the mayor's report, nothing except for the ice roads are open and we can come and go as we please now. Happy for that.
Is it open to any
5,000.
5,000, okay.
Anything for the SAO report?
Your worship, just variance reports were circulated today, so if you have any questions on that, feel free. Done the presentation in a little different way, talking to the auditors in a way that may be a little more informative for council. So if you have any questions, fire away.
Yeah, I do have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
When is the last working day of the village and when do you close? Are you like the government where you close at a certain, like for almost 2 weeks?
I'm coming along to that. Fireworks, the village is committing 4,000 to the fireworks on New Year's Eve, along with participation from, I don't want to get the name wrong, the group that Val is, does it go?
Oh, does it go up?
Yeah, and Beavertail. So it's looking like about a $10,000 firework commitment, and we're going in with 4, be in the council budget under grants and donations. Our office, I guess the village will be shutting down on December 20th, on the Friday. And we will not be open again until January 2nd. And that covers the Christmas holiday period for staff.
And there's emergency contact number saving case. Yeah.
We will be calling committee meetings later this week, either a finance committee or an HR committee or committee of the whole. somewhat dependent on how we make out tonight. So that will be probably finance on Thursday and HR on Friday. Do those dates conflict with anybody at lunchtime?
Oh, this is lunch.
This will be lunch, yes. But you will get a notice and all that stuff once we determine our path forward. And that is my report, Your Worship.
Okay, new business subcommittees.
I wanted to speak to that, if I may, Your Worship. I know the subcommittees has been a point of discussion around the table on process, and I think to give fuller clarity to it, I dropped the ball a bit on that in terms of, I should have found that bylaw earlier. The one that was done in 2015. It certainly would have allowed us to get through this process much smoother, and hopefully the bylaw's intention will make it easier this evening to strike our subcommittees. So anyway, that's where I'm at. So in terms of the interpretation of the bylaw, it is the council's decisioning in terms of structuring the committees. So I guess I'd have to say that being the past practice was working within that bylaw to do what we did initially, to allow each of you to indicate your preferences. And then from that, the committees were drafted, and there were changes to a couple of them. And so we're back at the table to have further discussion and see where council wants to go.
Thank you for providing this. This is actually more clear, the TOR, and as well even the template of the report of the committee when they present it to the council.
That's how we can be.
The only thing is that we have 5 committees that was identified.
Yes,
The contract committee it's going to be.
it's kind of rolled into the finance.
The finance?
Yes.
Okay, so, okay.
Councilor Fontaine.
Yeah, so I guess when I looked at it, I looked at what everybody picked. And if we just look under community development, for example, anybody who picked it as their first choice, we had Amy, Eliza, Rashinda. So I would say since we need 4 people, if they picked it as their first choice, those 3 people would get their choice. That's what I would think. And then James had picked it as his second choice. So that would give us 4 people. Then I go to finance. I mean, because when I look at it, it looks very clear. We just give people what they asked for.
Yeah, but that's not what we want to do.
Yeah,
Why do we not want to?
Because there's
Why,
conflicts and that sort of thing.
what conflict?
So what I'd like to see for the 2 committees that are in contention or whatever you want to call it, I'd like to see all the new councillors on those 2 committees, right? So go ahead.
I think if we're going with what council wants, everybody picked what they want. I think, and the idea of having just new councillors on the committees doesn't make sense. For example, I have knowledge of things that have happened in the past where the village could potentially be in legal hot water, you know, for things. So I feel that being a two-term counselor already, I have information that I could share. You know. And none of these committees make decisions on their own anyway. It's to make recommendations which we bring back to
Exactly.
the full council. So I'm not sure, and when you say that you want to do it different, I'm not sure that, I think it's important to remember that, first of all, no one of us can act on our own. We are all part of council, we all have equal votes. So that wouldn't matter. Also, it talks about having 4 people on the committee.
Yeah.
So I don't think we can really just be changing it that based on one person's opinion, we're going to start putting everybody on one committee. Or we would just do that for all of them. And then what's the point of having committee meetings?
Then we can discuss.
Councilor,
Actually, I had a very terrible day at work that day, and I worked with finance. And so when the committees were coming and I saw finance and administration, I was like, no, I'm not going there. I don't know, put that like 3rd or something. Because that was the kind of day that I had. And then later, when I thought about it, I thought, no, I actually should be on this, on the finance and administration committee, because that's probably where I could help out the most. So I did get in touch with the mayor, and I let him know that I had a bad day when I chose mine, and just wrote down, you know, whatever it was that I wrote.
And for me, I chose mine based on what I figured I never know more about, but same as me, like I would like to know more about the financial aspects and even HR, because like I don't know about, you know. So, but that's, you know, but is it a committee just for the one, like this first year? Because we're 3 years, right? Yeah, we're 3-year term, so can we change even if we try and say, hey, well, is there anything against that? We'd like to switch and say it's not for us, or
That's a possibility as well, like, does it have to be a whole 3-year term?
I believe
No, it's
the,
just every
You know,
year.
according to this one, it would
Change
change.
it every.
Yeah, every
Yeah,
year.
every January
So it gives a
changes.
chance for others to rotate.
yeah. So that would be,
Yeah.
you know, that would be good.
So, I'm sorry, yeah, okay. Actually, now that we have the TOR, it's a lot clearer what are the aspects that are considered into this. But today is the avenue where we can actually step up and say, okay, which one do you prefer and which one you don't want from the original list that was provided. Like, now realizing that I may not know a lot about public works, but maybe I'll learn from that, you know? Maybe I'm good at one thing, maybe I give a chance to other people to learn something from that, you know? That's
Public
my-
Works is not high in anyone's list.
Well, I know, but now that I'm learning, because I'm with the TOR, it's a lot clearer what are the expectations. But today, I guess that we're missing 2 counselors to actually finalize this again, right? So, but, you know, I want to be on the 3, but, you know, but I'd like everybody to have a chance to take their choice first. But I'd like to sit on a 3, and any of those, I'm okay.
I'd like to definitely stay on the committee. That's my goal, that was my question. If I could understand it's something that I don't know anything about, we learn, and that.
and another reason is I don't think businessmen should be picking,
Finance?
not finance, but let's say the SAO, the contracts, right, like that's what it's all about, it's about contracting. And, yeah, the SAO, you know, that should be
Well, they have to declare conflict, if ever.
yes.
Yeah.
Counselor Casano.
Thank you, Mayor. I disagree with you on that. You know, when we took the oath here, we took the oath to serve the community. So we can't single out businessmen, that's me. Oh,
No, I
so I'm
understand.
really sorry to say that, let me finish, Mr. Mayor. Okay, you know, we cannot break the act to accommodate our needs. We cannot break the law to please somebody. So we have to follow the rules and we have to follow the act. And I remember earlier, the last meeting, I told you guys, I don't, at the end of the day, those committees, they bring recommendation. The recommendation to the committee of the whole or to the council, then we vote on it. I personally don't want to be in any committee. And I do, as a council, I do have the right to ask each committee and at the end of the day to vote for what I see is right, which help the community. For example, the HR. This council have nothing to do with the HR other than the SAO. With the SAO, so 3 councillors or 4 councillors, if they deal with one issue, which is the only employee of the council is the SAO.
Correct.
They might not need 3 years if we hire an SAO. We might not have an HR committee for the rest of the term. So let us be practical. And as it's written on the act, it's, in fact, that's on the CTD Act. It's not according to me, it's on Canada Citizen Towns and Villages Act, that the councils have the right to decide where a committee to sit on, and they approve it. So it's not up to the mayor, it's not up to the SAO to decide what council sit on what committee. So let us cut it short and see who want to sit on each committee with good faith, and I mentioned this before, with good faith. And let's just go ahead and we don't have to argue. Like right now, we're being stalling 3 meetings or 4 meetings for something very small, very, very tiny. So I personally don't put me in any committee. Put me on direct committee. Right now, SAO, put me, if you don't mind, put me on direct committee, and that's the committee which I want to be. The rest, I don't want to be in any other committee.
Because we go around the table and just say what each one we
That would be
want.
helpful.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's good. So for me, I'd like to consider to be part of the community development, the financial and human resources.
Those 3?
Yeah, those 3.
For myself, finance, human resources, and the community planning
Community development.
development
Same.
and the rec. And the rec.
Myself, I prefer to be on rec and community development.
Pick a third choice.
Public works.
Only direct.
Only rep.
Thank you.
I wanted to be on rec, but my first choice is definitely community development. And if I can try my hand at finance or human resources, even something I've never, even public works, something I've just, that I don't know a lot about, and I like to learn more, so I'm happy I do that,
You do want to be on rec
yes.
and
Well,
community
but-
development?
Yeah.
Okay, what would your third, if you were going to pick one of the remaining?
Probably finance and administration.
And you mentioned public works too, right?
Yeah, public, any one of them, like if
Well,
someone
at least you have-
I just want big.
I'm trying to just, 3 committees for each, sort of like that, I guess if you can.
Because we can't make a final decision without, that's all, and Kathy and Kathy, right?
Uh,
You need 4, right?
Okay, let's go through these. Community development has 4 members.
Okay, you forgot him. Troy.
Oh, I forgot about him, yeah.
So originally, just same as now, my first choice was HR,
Yes,
my second choice was finance,
yes,
third choice, community development,
yes.
fourth choice, recreation, which is the only committee I was put on.
Yeah.
And then fifth choice is public works. But HR, finance, community development. And I'm not sure if there was a reason why I was removed from it, but I'd be interested if there is.
So community development has 5 people who have expressed an interest. Councillor Belfontaine, Councillor Clee, Councillor Tetzel, Councillor Pascal-Mat, and Councillor Shalfo. Finance has 4. Councillor Belfontaine, Councillor Pascal-Mat, Councillor Clee, and Councillor Shalfo. Public Works, the only one that's expressed an interest is Councillor Tetzo. And,
Eliza.
but that puts you on 4 committees. Are you okay with that?
You could put me on there, because, I don't know, I'm pretty, flexible, like, if she wants to be on one, or if they're not here, I mean, I just want,
Sure.
the experience, I want.
Okay. So where are we at? So we have Councillor Shalfo and Councillor Tetzo on Public Works. We can draw names for the other 2, because it doesn't seem to be a popular one. But I'll try and divvy it up so nobody's got too many committees. Recreation, we have Councillor Tetzo, Councillor Hassan, and Councillor Shalfo. Councillor Fraser indicated that to be her number 1 choice. So Councillor is
And Councillor Tetzel
And
also did that one as well
which one?
For the rec.
Yeah, she did not have that. She had that number 3.
Oh, okay.
So if we were to put Councillor Fraser on rec, it would give us 4. It would give her her first choice. And I think we're making headway. And HR, Councillor Belfontaine, Councillor Pascal-Mat, Councillor Clee, and also Councillor Tetzo had that as her number 1, or Deputy Mayor Tetzo had that as her number 1. That would give us 4. Now, we have 4 for all the committees except Public Works. Does anyone not on Public Works want to volunteer?
I will go.
Okay. Councillor Clee,
I'll go. Why
Well,
not?
Amy would want.
Did
She was okay with that. She was okay with any of those.
I'm going to respectfully put her on Public Works and we'll set it that way. Because she was only on 1 committee at this point.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll run through it one more time. Community Development, Councillor Belfontaine, Councillor Pascal-Mat, Councillor Tetzo, and so we got 5 there. Do any of the, do any one of the 5
Tetzo?
wish to leave?
James or Kathy?
Councillor James.
Oh, okay.
Does council think this is an important enough committee to put 5 members on?
2, 4. Who's the other one? Belfontaine?
Belfontaine, Pascal-Mat, Tetzo, Community Development.
Oh, what about myself?
Councillor
Sorry.
Shalfo and Councillor Clee.
Okay.
If that was my third choice, so if somebody needs to remove from that one, because that was my third choice, I'd be
Well-
okay with it.
We're gonna remove you when you're good with that?
If that gets us down to 4 for
Yeah.
that one.
Okay. So Councillor Pascal-Mat, Councillor Tetzo, Councillor Clee, and Councillor Shalfo will be on Community Development. Finance would have Councillor Shalfo, Councillor Clee, Councillor Pascal-Mat, and Councillor Belfontaine. Public Works, Counselor Tetso, Counselor Klee, Counselor Shalafo, and Counselor Fraser. Recreation, Counselor Tetso, Counselor Hassan, Counselor Shalafo, and Counselor Fraser. HR, Counselor Bellefontaine, Counselor Pascal Matt, Counselor Klee, and Deputy Mayor Tetso. Do we have consensus? I guess we'll put that through as a motion.
Who's the other one? I know. Is Eliza on the HR too? Okay, Kathy, that's so.
No,
No, who's the fourth one?
Deputy Mayor Tetso, Counselor Klee, Counselor Pascal Matt, and Counselor Bellefontaine.
Oh, okay. So in our meeting, when we get together, that's when we choose our chair.
Choose your chair, yes.
Yeah, perfect, thank you.
Motion.
How many am I on?
So Kathy is okay to only be one?
4.
Deputy Mayor Kat, that's all I meant. She only are in one. Because I know she wants to be on the finance too.
If Counselor Shalafo is 4, but she finds it too much,
It might be,
then could she,
because I'm also,
as we move through things and she becomes more familiar,
yeah,
she could always step down from one.
Maybe we'll come out the public works
yeah,
and just focus on those 3.
yes,
Counselor Tetso, or Deputy Mayor Tetso.
okay.
Okay.
I think we can put Kathy on the finance. She mentioned last time she wants to be on that.
If we put her on, we're gonna take someone off.
Well, Eliza had 4 seats, so would you like to drop one of them?
I did.
She dropped Public Works.
Public Works?
Yeah.
I can drop finance and go to Public Works if necessary. You know, I just, Kathy is very, it's a good resource on finance as well.
Okay, so you
Doesn't matter,
switch finance to Public Works?
Yeah, because if you present something, I'm gonna ask questions to you guys. That's where you're gonna have to watch me.
I know that to be a fact,
Yeah.
so.
Because you can present something, but that's when it's my chance to ask questions. I don't mind going to Public Works and replace Eliza on that.
I'm gonna leave Deputy Mayor on Public Works here.
Oh, she will be on the Public Works?
Yeah, it just,
You keep me on to the finance?
you're off the finance, she's on
Okay.
it,
Yeah,
but you're staying on the Public Works.
okay. Yeah, because I want to go to Public Works to replace Eliza.
Yes,
That's why I'm dropping finance, so that you keep it.
yeah, that's basically what we're. Okay, Community Development. Counselor Pascal Matt, Counselor Tetso, Counselor Klee, Counselor Shalafo. Finance. Counselor Bellefontaine, Counselor Klee, Counselor Shalafo, Deputy Mayor Tetso. Public Works, Counselor Tetso, Counselor Klee, Deputy Mayor Tetso, and Counselor Fraser. Recreation, Counselor Tetso, Counselor Hassan, Counselor Shalfo, and Counselor Frazier. HR, Counselor Belfontaine, Counselor Pascal Matt, Counselor Tui, and Deputy Mayor Tetso. Motion to approve as discussed.
Okay. We got a motion moved by Counselor Tetso, seconded by Counselor Pascal Matt, that council's list of subcommittees be approved as discussed. All in favor? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Motion's carried. Okay, appointment, acting, okay, got a motion, yeah, nobody moved or seconded it. Okay, that, council appoint Adrian Heron as acting SAO from December 11th, 2024 to January 27th, 2025. I need somebody to move. Councilor Tetso.
December 11th to
January 27th.
27th.
Yes.
And Councilor Hassan, the second. Okay, all in favor?
I abstain.
Can I ask for a recorded?
I abstain as well.
Record. Councilor Pascal Matt,
Abstain.
abstain.
And abstain.
Councilor Key, abstain.
I think I have to abstain because it was a comment, isn't it?
No, no, sir.
Up to you, if you want to abstain.
If she feel that she's in bias or conflict. she
Yeah.
could
You can.
You can.
But you're not in conflict.
Yeah. Councilor Tetzel. Councilor Song, and I. Councilor Shalfo.
I was saying,
Okay, Councilor Shalfo, abstain. Yes. Councilor LaFontaine. Okay, 3 yeses. Abstained 3. Votes for 3. Carried?
Yes.
It's carried.
For extension.
Clarify that, but
That's good.
Oh, I didn't.
Motion is carried.
Motion's carried.
So you mentioned it's a recorded vote? Yeah.
Okay. Oh, no correspondence information,
council issues.
council matters. Councilor Pascal, that, then we'll, issues.
I won't be here on December 16 onwards, so if there's any meeting or subcommittee meeting happening, I'm just letting you ahead of time. I won't be back until January 6th. Just to note.
Councilor Lee,
I just really worried about the last motion. I just feel like as a counselor, I am liable for what happens within the village, and I just don't want to be liable for anything done by somebody that is not competent, experienced enough to be in the position and make decisions for the village. And so that worries me for the next couple weeks, like over the holidays and everything. And that's worrisome for me, what might happen. And I don't want to be held accountable or liable for that, so.
You cannot be with the council vote, right?
Well, mayor would be liable because you break the tie. And she's reporting to you anyway, so you're liable too.
You can't go on your holiday.
I would respectfully suggest to council that Mr. Heron is more than competent to undertake what would be required for that period of time in terms of his knowledge of the operation, his abilities, and his competency. I have no issue with it. That's why I've made, put forth for council to give it consideration. It is our long-term goal
I think we should,
to have that.
that's a personal issue. I think we should not further discuss that matter. About, the individual,
Okay, I'll leave it there then. I just wanted to clarify the matter of competency and experience and liability. I don't feel there is an exposure to the village, so. Okay, respectfully disagree.
Councilor Tetzel?
So there's been a number of wolf sightings in the community. So I just want to urge our community members, our residents to be cautious, all out in the field, walking your dogs. There's a lot of our dogs roving around, so we might end up having a few more instances within the community. I also wanted to extend kudos to our crews when it comes to snow removal in the community. I think they've done a very good job, and I hope they keep up the good work. And that's it.
Councilor Song?
I don't have anything. I would just like to apologize to fellow councilor Pascoma. At last meeting, we kind of had heated discussion, and we kind of I don't know, I believe it was misunderstanding, so I'm really sorry, Councilor Pascoma, for the misunderstanding. Thank you.
accepted, apology accepted.
Councilor,
We're like, we have love and hate relationship.
Councilor Shallow?
I just want to say I didn't abstain because I don't believe that Adrian is not competent or able to, do the job he's going to be taken on, because he's talked to me and said a few things, and then I'll let him say himself that he's going to say to the council. And
Can I request point of order, please? You don't have to mention that.
okay.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, you don't have to mention anything, so you
So-
don't have.
Yeah, you don't have to ask your
All right, but my one big concern is the boxes, and that the guys at the shelter are feeding them. It's gotta stop. I don't know if we can put out like bait traps for them or but something, because they're coming right up to you. It's like, what? And, it comes to my little boy, my boy already scared of dogs. He's gonna
So we can look at,
We'll follow up on that and deal with
stop feeding them. It's something I say.
I was gonna bring it up.
it. Thank you.
Councilor Delphine?
Yeah, I guess just kind of the same thing where it's like public education on wolves, foxes, wildlife, even just in general being cautious driving, because not everybody has good tires on their vehicle. I know the other day I was pulling out and I only had it in the truck in two-wheel drive, and I saw an opportunity to pull out and I tried to get out, and it's like so slow, so I get halfway out, so it's just important to keep in mind that not everybody has the newest tires, and I see a lot of people driving very close to people and stuff, so just being cautious in general is a good idea.
And we're gonna be looking at the Christmas lights on the telephone poles.
It's been action, so it's somewhat challenging with the shortage of staff that are presently in Simpson.
Sorry. Done? I'll speak after you. Sorry.
So, yeah, but it is, it's in the pipe.
I just wanted to add that I might be traveling, somewhere between like the 13th, 14th, 15th, maybe, I don't know, 16th in there. So if there's, well, maybe even the 12th, but if there's any meetings in there that I don't know.
Next Monday's POW, another special, will be the last scheduled meeting for 2024, and then we'll pick up again in the new year.
And I have nothing except for the functions. Okay, got a motion moved by Councilor Pascal Matt that council adjourn regular meeting RM 23-2024 at
9:37.
9:37.
Don't misinterpret when I said love and hate. He's my brother from another